It began like any other Sunday morning. The choir rehearsed hymns, children tugged at their parents' hands, and the soft hum of small-town Michigan life echoed through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For decades, this had been a place of peace, of ritual, of safety. But on September 28, 2025, at exactly 10:25 a.m., that safety shattered. Witnesses describe it as if the world itself tore open. A silver pickup came roaring toward the church doors. The crash was deafening. Wood splintered, glass exploded. In the chaos of dust and flames, families screamed. Parents shielded their children. And then he stepped out. A man with a rifle. Calm, silent, focused. His name was Thomas Jacob Sanford, 40 years old, a Marine veteran, a neighbor, a father. To those who knew him, he was quiet. To those in that church, in that instant, he was death itself. He raised his weapon and began to fire. The shots rang out one after another, echoing through pews where prayers had just been whispered. People dropped to the ground, some hit instantly, others diving for cover. Survivors recall the terror in fragments. "I thought it was fireworks," one whispered later, "until I saw the blood." Another survivor remembers holding her child so tight she could barely breathe, certain those were their last moments. The sanctuary turned into a battlefield. Flames licked the altar as pews became shields. In just minutes, 4 lives were gone. 8 more were wounded, and every person inside that church would carry scars, visible or not, for the rest of their lives. Outside, smoke billowed from shattered windows. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air. A mother stumbled barefoot into the street, dragging her injured teenage son. A man carried his wife, her blood soaking into his shirt. Witnesses say the screams carried for blocks. Sounded less like a shooting and more like a war. But why here? Why now? Why Thomas Sanford? The investigation would eventually piece together the chilling puzzle. But that morning, no one had answers. Only shock. Police rushed the scene, guns drawn, terrified of what they might find. Outside, first responders scrambled as terrified parishioners flooded the streets, some barefoot, others covered in blood. Officers described the scene as like a war zone. The smoke, the screams, the silence of those who would never speak again. And in the middle of it all, Thomas Sanford was tackled, disarmed, and dragged away, not fighting, not screaming, almost resigned. The man who had brought terror into a sanctuary walked out in handcuffs, his face blank, his eyes unreadable. The world wanted to know, who was he? How did this happen? And most importantly, why? At first, Thomas Sanford seemed like an unlikely monster. Neighbors described him as polite, quiet, always waving when he walked his dog. A veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, he had served tours overseas. He knew discipline. He knew order. He had no criminal record. He wasn't a known extremist. No one suspected he harbored rage powerful enough to bring carnage to a house of worship. But investigators soon uncovered the cracks beneath the surface. Sanford had been struggling, financial strain, a divorce that had left him bitter, and beneath it all, a growing obsession with violence. His internet history painted a chilling picture. Hours spent watching videos of mass shootings, reading manifestos, searching gun schematics. In journals recovered from his home, scribbled in angry handwriting, he wrote of betrayal, of hopelessness, of vengeance. One passage read, "They don't hear me when I speak. They'll hear me when I roar." But Sanford's decision wasn't just a roar. It was a calculated act of destruction. The rifle he used was registered to him. The crash wasn't random. Investigators found evidence he had scouted the church in the weeks before. He had planned the attack with military precision. And when the morning came, he carried it out with a coldness that left even seasoned officers shaken. As the news broke, the nation reacted with horror. Candlelight vigils lit up Michigan neighborhoods. Families clutched pictures of loved ones taken too soon. 4 dead, 8 wounded, dozens more haunted. Their names became more than numbers. Fathers, mothers, children, friends. At vigils, hymns were sung through tears. Entire communities asked the same question. Why? The trial of Thomas Sanford was swift but complex. Prosecutors charged him with multiple counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and terrorism. In court, evidence was laid bare. The pickup truck crash, the rifle, the journals, the surveillance footage that captured his movements before the attack. Survivors took the stand, their voices breaking as they relived the moment the sanctuary turned to hell. A woman described holding her dying husband's hand as Sanford walked past without a glance. Another survivor recalled dragging 3 children under a pew, whispering prayers as bullets splintered the wood above their heads. Sanford himself sat silently through much of the proceedings. No emotion, no apology. Times he stared ahead, expressionless. At others, he lowered his eyes, scribbling notes on a pad. His defense argued post-traumatic stress disorder, claiming his years in combat had fractured his mind. They painted him as a man broken by war, abandoned by the system. But prosecutors countered with evidence of planning. This wasn't a snap. This wasn't a breakdown. It was deliberate, cold, calculated. Courtroom analysts called it one of the most chilling trials Michigan had ever seen. And for the families, it was agony. Each day forced them to relive the worst moments of their lives. Erica Caldwell, who lost her 14-year-old daughter in the shooting, sobbed as she testified, "I still hear her voice. I still see her shoes by the door. And now all I have is silence." The jury deliberated less than 2 days. The verdict, guilty on all counts. Thomas Sanford would spend the rest of his life in prison, without the possibility of parole. But for many, the verdict brought little relief. Could not bring back the dead. Could not erase the trauma. Could not answer the haunting question of why. And that question has lingered ever since. What transforms a quiet neighbor into a mass killer? Was Sanford driven by ideology? Or was it madness? Was it his past in war? Or his present in despair? Or something darker? Something we may never fully understand? Even now, months later, the church has been rebuilt. The broken windows replaced. The pews restored. But memory cannot be repainted. Survivors still hear the echo of gunfire in their dreams. Children still startle at loud noises. Parents still clutch photos of the loved ones who never came home. For them, time has not healed. It has only deepened the scar. In the aftermath, politicians made speeches. Promises were shouted on stages. Gun laws were debated. Mental health systems were scrutinized. But for those who lived it, the debates felt hollow. No law, no speech, no reform could erase the screams that still echoed in their ears. And so, the story of Thomas Sanford became more than a crime. It became a mirror, a reflection of the violence that lurks beneath the surface of ordinary towns, ordinary streets, ordinary people. It forced America to confront a question it has asked too many times before, and will likely ask again. When sanctuaries are no longer safe, where do we turn? The faces of the victims line vigils even now. Their names are read in ceremonies, their stories told in whispers. Survivors share their accounts not because they want to, but because they need to, because silence only lets the pain grow. And Thomas Sanford? He sits in a prison cell, silent, expressionless, a man who traded his life for a moment of violence. His reasons, if he ever truly had them, remain locked inside his mind. But one truth is inescapable. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Michigan will never be the same. Its walls may be rebuilt, but the shadows of that day will always linger. And those who were there will never forget the sound of the crash, the burst of flames, the silence before the shots, and the blood that followed. Because in the end, this story isn't just about Thomas Sanford. It's about every unanswered question, every broken life, every sanctuary turned battlefield. It's about the fragility of safety, the illusion of peace, and the haunting reality that sometimes the greatest threat is not a stranger in the distance, but the neighbor next door. This is the story of a Sunday morning that turned to ash. This is the story of a community forever scarred. This is the story of the Michigan church shooting. And its questions, its pain, still echo in the silence left behind.